so happy to have our three panelists here with us discussing safe spaces and nightlife. If y'all wouldn't mind going around, introducing yourself, your pronouns, and maybe what you consider a safe space to be, that would be a great way to start off this session. Maybe Cyrus start, I don't.
Sure, my name is Cyrus Golestan. I use he, him pronouns. I'm an Iranian-American trans man, photographer, trans advocate, and apparel company founder. Other is a myth. And yeah, are we doing just intros now?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll pass it to Alex.
Okay. My name is Alex Berg. My pronouns are she, her. I am a proud bisexual queer femme. I am a journalist. I've covered LGBTQ issues for the past decade. And I'm just super stoked to be here with some amazing people having an important and fun conversation.
So it's my turn, and I'm in the middle of trying to change my name. I was also trying to add my pronouns, but I'll do that after. I don't know why this didn't just automatically upload those things. But anyway, my name is Devin-Norelle. I'm going to skip over the gazillion things that I have my hands in, because there are a lot. My pronouns are Zim. I'm a native of New York, a native of Harlem. I think we forgot land acknowledgement, so I will say I'm on Lenape land. And I'm just really excited to be here tonight, and also to talk amongst people that I've known for a while. And I think this is going to be a really great conversation. So I'm looking forward to it. Now back to me adding my pronouns on Zoom.
Really looking forward to. I'm Talia. I use she, her pronouns, and I am so excited to be facilitating this Henrietta Hudson panel about safe spaces and nightlife. I was wondering how you would define safe space, perhaps examples of safe clubs, bars, places in nightlife that you've been introduced to or experienced.
I think I'll jump into this. This is not going to be the perfect answer, but I think for me the safe space in terms of especially nightlife is boiled down to, and I hate to say this, in many cases, just not being in the gaze of cis het men, and maybe even cis gay men sometimes, depending on the situation. There are a lot of gay bars that I won't walk into because I know it is culturally acceptable in some cases for gay men to kind of like grope other gay men, or like, I guess if they assume that you're gay and you're in that space that they will grope you. And I'm not comfortable with that. That's really weird to me. So I would say, but for the most part, I would say that a place where I can go and be myself without judgment, without the gaze of cis het men, to dance or whatever it may, maybe it is to gather to meditate, gather to write in a safe space. I think a great example is for the past few months, I've been taking an acting class with a teacher who's trans, and it feels like a safe space because I know that she will speak up if, say, one of the other members of the class, if they don't happen to be queer or on the LGBTQIA spectrum, she'll speak up if there are assumptions made about someone's gender or race or whatever. That is a safe space for me. And I say that because I'm joining an acting class where the teacher is a cishet white man, and I really don't know what to expect. And like, then how do I kind of assert myself in a space where I say, well, this is my name, these are my pronouns, this is my gender, please don't gender me in other ways. I'm worried about not being respected. Is this going to be a safe space for me or not? So yeah, I would say just a place where you know that you will be respected, you won't be judged. People will stick up for you, will stand up for you, will say something if an incident does occur. And yeah, I feel like I'm forgetting a few things. I'm just gonna shut up now, and if anything comes to mind, popcorn it back to myself somehow. Let's see.
Well, what you said, Devin-Norelle, really resonated with me, just as a space where you're not having to deal with the gaze of the cishet guys. So I felt that in my soul. For me, I feel like when I think of safe spaces, I feel like a safe space is inherently aspirational, right? Because I think we as human beings carry around the cultures that we are a reflection of the cultures that we've been raised in. And I feel like one of the reasons why I love having a conversation like this is because we get to really like unpack all of these things so much. And I feel like, so for me, like a safe space is something that we aspire to, but because everyone is engaging with LGBTQ issues, with social issues on a different level, sometimes it's hard to know if the place that you're stepping into, if that's going to be a safe space, so, and I feel like there's such an element of also like interpersonal care and community care that also goes into aspiring to creating a space where people can be themselves. And I feel like for me, like in nightlife, what I think about is being able to go into a queer centric space, and really be surrounded, not only like know that it's a place that cares about these things and cares about having these conversations, but also being around friends and other folks who I know are also looking out for me, where we can like have our crew and I can like throw back some drinks, like get wild on the dance floor and know that like I'm gonna feel safe there. And also I'm gonna be like looking out for my friends to make sure that they're having a good experience, to make sure that they're being treated well in the club, or wherever we are as well.
Yeah, I echo what Devin-Norelle and Alex have said. When the question, how do you define safe space? For whom? For which bodies, for which races, for which gender identities and expressions, because there can be a safe space for a certain group, but it wouldn't be safe for other groups. So I think, a safe space is really a space, especially like in a queer space, where there should be no assumption of gender, because gender identity and gender expression are very different, and those are different from sexual orientation. So it's just safer to not assume things based on the way people look, and then no gatekeeping as well. And that's a tricky one, because in order to create a safe space, you do have to, curate the space a bit and keep certain things out, like the cis men who continue to prove that they do not, they're not aware of creating safe space for other people. So there's a balance between keeping a safe space and not gatekeeping people out. And then like to have that actually work, like the staff need to know this, the bartenders, the bouncers, the door people, like from the top to the bottom, all the staff needs to it needs to be a place where you feel comfortable reaching out for help from the staff and from other like party goers or club goers as well.
Thank you so much. Those were excellent answers. And Cyrus, what you were saying made me think, how does one respectfully approach someone else and ask their pronouns? How does one initiate that conversation to continue to facilitate that safe space?
I can take this. The easiest way to do that is to, I literally just did this yesterday as I was training HBO. The easiest way to do this is to approach a person and introduce yourself and say, hi, my name is Devin-Norelle. My pronouns are Zizim Ziz. What's your name? What are your pronouns? And by introducing, when you introduce your name, it invites someone to introduce their own name, right? So when you introduce your pronouns along with your name, you're asking for them to do the same thing. In the event that you're not able to actually ask that person, it is always best to default to the gender neutral term they, them, or ask perhaps another person that may know them. But if you're using, if you're referencing this person in conversation and you don't actually know who what their pronouns are and you don't have access to them or someone else to ask, then it's best to just default to they, them. But I mean, if we're in nightlife and we're in a club, if I'm going up to someone that I find attractive, I'm like, hey, my name is so-and-so, you fine, these are my pronouns, what are your pronouns, what is your name? And it's as simple as that. And again, if you can't, I know there are a lot of people, wow, this takes me back to when I was 18. There are a lot of people that will send their homeboy or homegirl or home they to like go get that person across the room that you find attractive because maybe you're too shy or whatever, maybe you just don't have any game, I don't know. I didn't have game, that's why it takes me back to my 18-year-old self. But when you send your friend to go like, hey, you know, my friend likes you, what's your name? Your friend can ask for the pronouns too. So it's really just that simple.
Thank you. In your experience, what spaces have felt, all three of you spoke about the cis het white male space, but are there any other specific unsafe environments that you've experienced, and what in particular kind of shifts those environments from safe to unsafe, and then how do you excuse yourself or just proceed?
Hey, Talia, I just wanted to piggyback on Devin-Norelle's answer real quick. Like, it got me thinking, like, actually going up to somebody and sharing your pronouns and then asking, like, in a really, like, authentic, curious way, like, okay, I'm a trans man. How do you identify? Like, that actually could be a really empowering question. That could actually be a pickup line, because maybe nobody's felt empowered to self-identify before. And it can like actually lead to a really cool connection, really cool conversation that's like maybe stands out from other conversations people are having. So you just got me thinking on that, Devin-Norelle. So.
Yeah, totally a pickup line. That's awesome. I understand if discussing what creates or defines an unsafe space is a little bit tricky. It's a little bit too broad. So maybe going back to gatekeeping, which is something that Cyrus and I think Devin-Norelle both talked about. How do you navigate it, or other types of disrespect that you've encountered just in the world or within nightlife?
I'm really trying to think of like specific examples, and I do have some, but they have taken places in safer spaces. For instance, one of my favorite daytime parties, I love day parties, in bed by 10. One of my favorite day parties, I'm not gonna name them right now, they're a collective based in Brooklyn, and it was over the summer in 2019, last year was 2019, 2020 does not count. So anyway, in 2019, I went to this party and I was approached by this random person, just kind of like, oh, why are you at this party? And I'm like, what? Like, who the hell are you? First of all, why are you in my face? I'm minding my business. And oh, you know, it's just weird that you're at this party, you know, like you're a man, or like you're a beautiful man. I mean, also just trying to compliment me in the middle of this, which is hella weird. And like, but this is, you know, like this party is mostly like women and queer women. And the only thing I can look and think to myself was, what is it any of your business? You know, that's like the only thing I can get out of. I was so stunned. But when I approached, the party is actually thrown by like 4 or 5 people who self-identify as transmasculine. So, but yes, the majority of the people are the patrons, or really it's a good mix in my opinion, but the majority, if from the outside looking in, the majority of the patrons appear to be all queer women and or lesbian women. I'll just say and lesbian women, because I think there's a huge distinction between the two. And so, again, you could be perceived as a woman and identify as transmasculine, or identify as man, etc. Which is why I say from the outside looking in, it's perceived to be, and perhaps even in this person's eyes, perceived to be a women's party. I know the people that run the party, and I approach them and I let them know what happened. They asked me, what can they do to rectify the situation. One of the suggestions was just, ban this person from this party, and first talk to them, and if they are receptive to the things that they need to speak, they could ban them. There were so many other suggestions, and of course it's slipping my mind. What's so funny is my current partner actually dated this person. I was telling them the story. I was telling Monique the story, and she's like, "Oh, I actually dated this person. No surprise." No surprise there. This person is just kind of like just intrusive and gatekeepy, if I may. And so, but at the end of the day, what was more important to me is that even though I had this experience, also I was with someone else, and we were having a conversation. So basically, this person kind of just interrupted this conversation, asked why I was in this space, and the other person, who is a cis-identified queer woman, defended me like, what is it? You're also saying, what is it? Your business. You need to go away. And I think also try to educate this person in terms of like what the type of party they were at, what type of people exist in the world, why we do belong in these spaces too, why spaces like that need to be intersectional in terms of like queer spaces in general. She went like through the whole nines. And so it's also great to have that ally. You should always have an ally in that space. But it for me, I felt very comforted by the fact that when I approached the owners of the space or the collective and the party, they were proactive in attempting to do something about it too. On the flip side, sorry, anyone want to go? Because I do have another weird kind of story, but I can go after.
I could jump in. I have an experience. One thing that I've encountered in queer spaces and parties is because I am a femme, people often just presume that I'm straight. And I've definitely been in spaces where I've encountered people who are like, why are you here? You're a straight woman. Or when I express to them that I'm bi, then that brings up a whole other level of stigma that they have about bi people. And so that can just be I've been in bars, like out trying to have a good night, and someone who came up to either tell me that I didn't belong there or tried to hit on me then gets engaged in this conversation where they're saying stuff that's like so biphobic to me. And I'm like, wait a second, you wanted to like buy me a drink? Like, I don't think that's gonna happen now. So I just, in my own experience, having this idea of assumptions of who belongs in what space, I've totally experienced that. And I think that everyone should just mind their business and not assume that somebody isn't where they're supposed to be in these spaces. The other thing too is that, kind of to the point about having like bouncers and owners and everyone be really keyed into who's coming in and what's going on in the club, I also think that as a white cis woman, I also need to be keyed in to how my friends are feeling in a space, right? Like, I need to be really in tune to if I'm with my queer friends of color, if I'm with my trans friends, like I need to be really keyed into, is this may be a safe space for me? Is this a safe space for them? Can I be like, hey bud, this doesn't seem like, are you okay here? Like, do you feel okay? Let's go find another place? Like, what's going on? That seemed like a weird interaction. I think that you have to be like extra conscious and also having conversations with your like other white cis friends about their behavior in the club and what's going on as well, because you're never going to be able, like, I think it would be impossible for everyone to basically screen every single person walking in, right? I just think that's like, and so I think it's like also incumbent on people who care about this stuff, especially if we are in positions of privilege, we move through this world with privilege, to also be like looking at ourselves and having those combos with our friends and just being very in tune with everything too.
Yeah, I would also add like kind of on the same page, people not seeing queerness, whether that's like femmes or like there's like the invisibility of trans men, because we might just blend in as like a cis man who's like in there to gawk at women, kissing women, or, you know, like the tropes. And it's funny because I've been on both spectrums. I went to NYU, and this is way pre-transition. I was very feminine presenting. And so I would go to like lesbian bars and people would be like, you know, what are you doing here? You're not a lesbian. And spoiler alert, they were right. But, you know, that's definitely not a safe space when you're telling somebody something like that. And now it happens as well. Like I'll go to, for example, like Stonewall with my partner, and people are assuming that we're like straight tourists, even though, you know, so it's like, that's my community. And I know that happens for a lot of trans masculine people. And another big thing that makes environments unsafe is cis gay men invalidating trans men. Like, and this has happened to me like at a pride event. Like there was a cis gay man hitting on me. And once I told him about my work in trans advocacy, he realized I was trans. And he's like, from that moment on, he called me a lesbian. And yeah, and that's not a unique experience, honestly. And then I know that like that happens as well with cis queer women invalidating trans women. So I think this is something that we need to talk about, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done around that.
I just want to kind of echo something that Cyrus said, as being that trans masculine person who people think is just like a cishet guy, gazing in the lesbian space. I had I feel like I used to hit on people a lot when I was at Henrietta Hudson, or a lesbian bar in general, before I transitioned. And like now I'm just like, okay, you know, does this person look like they could be queer, right? But anyway, I had an experience, it might have been like 2018 or 2019, where I saw someone I thought was super beautiful, and I was just like, I'm just gonna go up and say, hi, my name is, I think you're beautiful. You know, some stupid, I have no game type of line. And so I said it, and her response was, I'm a lesbian. And really the only thing I could say from that was just, okay, you know, like I could have just outed myself, not that it would have made a difference, because I'm assuming a lesbian is still not gonna be into a trans masculine person. Or rather, not a trans masculine person, but not someone that's perceived as a man. And so I think in that regards, even though Henrietta Hudson is now very much a queer space, you know, predominantly queer women's, but queer space for all queer people. I think it's still in my head for me, I'm just like, okay, let me respect the fact that this was first safe space for women. And I'm clearly not, or not that, or not that I'm not clearly not that, but I clearly don't identify as such. Because had I identified as a woman, regardless of how I was presenting, I would have said something. You know, something else as along the line of, you know, there are a lot of both cis and trans, there are a lot of lesbians with beards. So that isn't necessarily an adequate answer or response for someone that you don't want to hit on you, you know? But I just was like, you know, this is more of a safe space for women. Obviously, it's supposed to be a safe space for me, but this was a safe space for women first, and I'm going to respect that. And this was her response. I'm just going to step away, and I was like, okay, and that was it. And so, but also, my assumption in that moment was maybe she just thought I was a cishet man that was just gazing and whatnot, and was just like trying to not make her a lesbian, like unlesbian her life or whatever. But yeah, I wasn't trying to do that, and I wasn't going to pry any harder. But I think there's ways. There's different nuances, and there are different experiences for every person, regardless if you're trans or not. But I think that was an experience I had never had, because again, after transitioning, I don't really hit on people in queer women's spaces as much anymore. So I just let it be. And so after that, I'm just like, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't hit on queer women. But you know what? If anyone wants to hit on me, I'm here. But I'll just stand in the corner. But yeah, I just wanted to share that.
It's very, very funny. We got a question in the chat. I'm not so sure if you all can see the Q&A chat. It's a pretty intense question. Do any of you have a response to Alondra?
I personally wouldn't feel safe going back to that party and or venue until said party throwers, event coordinators, um, issued a statement, reprimanded that whoever caused the harm. Oh yeah, I can say the question out loud. It's loud, not loud. Wow. How would y'all recommend? Thank you for using gender neutral language. How would y'all recommend navigating sexual or emotional harm being reported in a nightlife scene? So yeah, I would prefer that I'm sorry, there are sirens, of course, when I want to speak. That the creators, the event coordinators issue a statement. Well, first already immediately, I'm sorry, can we hold on a second? I hate this.
Yeah, it's the curse of Zoom.
I feel like that is also just my Zoom life in New York City all the time. I'm like, whenever I'm having a meeting or just for some reason, as soon as you push record, it's like just noise. It's like the noises start, you know?
Oh my God, one time I got up at 7 a.m. to record a self-tape audition and 8 a.m. struck, which is when I started. And so they started drilling immediately across the street. And I was like, of course this would happen.
Of course.
Devin-Norelle, it's funny because I'm on so many Zooms with you, and your background noise makes me miss New York so much. It makes me so homesick.
Oh, come visit.
I'll be back. I will be back.
I hope so. So I'm sorry. I was really interrupted by the police. And so issue a statement already actively, as soon as someone makes a complaint, go approach the person, speak to them if they need to, reprimand them in some way. Initiate some sort of policy change or create new policies if they hadn't had any before. And some guidelines that will say, for instance, we don't tolerate this here, this and that. Maybe for some, if you violate one or two of the policies, depending on how terrible they are, maybe you get a warning. But if it's something like sexual harm, you're immediately not welcome back, and or maybe never engage with the police, I would say, but perhaps find a way to call them in by having them go through some type of inter-community rehabilitation. There's so many people now that offer their services in terms of, it's not called rehabilitation, it's called something else, but rehabilitating, say, people that have caused emotional sexual harm. I think about last summer in which a very popular TikToker / Instagrammer was called in for sexual assault. And that involved also, having to go through individual rehabilitation with another community member, and then following some guidelines as put forth by the person who was harmed by the event. So what does the person that was harmed desire? Would they prefer not to see this person at all? Not just at this party, but I think especially if you've been sexually assaulted, you have a say in terms of, like, you don't want to end up going to all these parties and that your abuser is there. And so I think that might be a more of a community level thing instead of just the party creators, where as a community, you all kind of agree, whether formally or not, agree that said abuser can no longer go to said parties. Because the person that was harmed, the survivor, does not want to see this person's face, But in terms of the folks that are creating this space, if the survivor says, hey, I would love to still continue coming here, but I don't think that would be good for anyone if the abuser continued to be a patron, and effectively banning that person from the space, I think there are other things that maybe could just be given a warning, and if it's violated more than once or more than twice, then it can essentially be banned. I think it's okay to give people a warning for certain things. Obviously, not sexual assault. You're done, in my opinion, or other forms of emotional abuse. But yeah, I think it really it's really dependent upon how the event coordinators respond and how quickly they respond and what they do to respond. Because honestly, they could just really brush it off. I think an example that comes up in my head is 2016, there had been an incident where a cis gay man at Poppy Juice had pushed a trans person or something. That person was called in. And if I remember correctly, Poppy Juice was slow to respond at first, but then quickly picked it up and, change some of their policies, issue some new ones, and we're able to proceed therefore from there. So yeah, I think those are just some examples. There are many more. I just can't think of them at the moment.
Just plus one to, I think, having a clear cut policy up front and having clear guidelines, because then I think that you also need to create a clear way of for people to report that these things are also happening. And then I also think like establishing these kind of like policies for accountability, just when you're posting that you're having this party, here are the guidelines. Like, here's what's okay in this space. Here's what we're not going to tolerate. You hear something, you see something, like here's a path, something happens to you, here is a path for reporting this in a way that also like doesn't do more harm to you. I feel like establishing these policies up front and really being thoughtful and thinking about them from the beginning, so that at this point, you know, you're not, the first time you're engaging with these issues shouldn't be when you're releasing a statement about what happened, right? Like, I think, you know, just especially over the past couple of years and the way conversations about like the Me Too movement, for example, have come to the fore, I think that now we're in a place where places can have these established policies to begin with, and also a clear path for people to report and be heard, and also feel like the way that it all works out, the way that it unfolds is not going to do them more harm as well.
Yeah, I would echo like, and having maybe like an anonymous form where you can report something that you don't feel comfortable being associated with, and maybe it was really traumatic. And I think, but if it's not anonymous, I think it's important for the organizers and the staff and the owners to like make sure that person's okay. And that's a different piece of the work. And then, like Alex said, like better than having a teachable moment is to have very preemptive, clear guidelines. And like the way I see it is like, you know, I've organized events. Like if I post a flyer on social media, swipe right and you're going to see the community guidelines like going on. Like we should really constantly push those guidelines out, just to, you know, make sure people are really aware, and we change the culture, because we know that this stuff happens.
Yes, I agree. An issue often ignored within the queer community is how we can even swing to the extremes of toxic masculinity and femininity and end up perpetuating such gender stereotypes and negative patterning. How do you all think that we as a community can address this to be better, to work better, and to create more safe spaces?
Did you say a good question, Devin?
Yeah, I actually got to think about this one.
I know. It's a really good question, because, and I'll just add this, like the behavior we expect from cis men, we often see it from trans men, and we often see it from lesbian women as well. Like, so let me ponder the answer. But naming it is really important. That's a first step.
I mean, I think some of the ways that it's perpetuated are even just the experiences that you, Cyrus, and Alex have already brought up, in terms of just existing in a space and being asked, "Oh, why are you here? You're femme." You know, like, you know, that's, in my opinion, just like a form of toxic masculinity and femininity, if you think about it, because it's like, okay, what type of, not even you're femme, it's like you are too feminine, right? So because I think a lot of, at least from my experience in living as a lesbian woman, I think a lot of lesbian people do kind of like separate femme from feminine woman. I don't know how to explain that distinction, but it's like, it's almost as if, you know, especially more masculine butch type women will say, oh, you can tell if a woman is queer, like a femme woman is queer. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but that's like policing. And I think a lot of that stems from, that's gender policing. And I think a lot of it does stem from like toxic masculinity at the end of the day, if we think about it. In terms of one, they are attracted to you, but also like, why are you in this space? You must not be this, like my gaydar or radar or wherever it comes from, which probably is also masculinity and toxic masculinity. Now that I think about it, says that you're too femme to be in this space. Like, what the fuck does that even mean? Okay, like I'm too femme. What? But I feel like a lot of that is the right. But there are so many other examples that I'm like blanking on right now. I just feel like that is one clear example of it.
Yeah, I do want to say that these bangs and these statement earrings are intended to let everyone know that I am a huge queer. So, no, but I kid. That totally, Devin-Norelle, everything that you said, like a million percent. There's also, I think, like policing that goes on with people's femininity. One of the big things this was making me think about, especially, was earlier on when I would go out to like lesbian bars and queer bars. I feel like because we're all subject to living in this like heterosexist world, the only model I had for relationships and going out to the bar would be like if a masculine presenting person was hitting on me, right? And like that was it. That's what I knew. And I feel like it's taken so much of like unpacking my own stuff to understand that dynamic and like why it was so upsetting. And I feel like, when I was like a baby queer, that was the big thing. It's like I didn't know that that's what was going on. I also felt like a lot of times I was in spaces where, in terms of just a lot of the people who were like perceived as being more attractive were not femmes, right? Or people who felt like they had more social capital were not femmes. And so, or were like, more masculine appearing or butch or, however folks choose to describe it. And I feel like it just took a really long time for me to recognize that also what I was doing, because I didn't know any better, was that, I was also feeding into that by like playing into the people who I was praising and who I thought was cool and like who I also wanted to talk to at the bar. Because I think that like, sometimes we're just a reflection of what we know. And all that I ever knew growing up was like, this is what happened if you're like a femme in a bar, like this is the dynamic that exists. And here's who gets attention at the bar and here's who gets to like dole out the attention. And I feel like a lot of my experiences earlier on were basically replicating those like straight, traditional dynamics as well, until I got older and like learned more and like dealt with my stuff and, basically like have engaged in so many conversations on the internet and found really queer spaces.
Awesome. Yeah. So I pondered and I came up with 2 practical actions about how we can work to be better. Okay. I encourage everyone on an individual level, including myself, to next time we go out, dress up completely differently than you would normally dress up. Like dress up outside of your gender identity and expression and go and see how you are treated differently. Because being trans, like I've been on perceived across different parts of the gender spectrum, and it's wild to see how differently I'm treated and the access that I have on certain parts of the gender spectrum versus others. So I think that's a really good experiment. And then also as a community, I think it'd be cool to have like a genderless speed dating. Like you don't like, the goal is not to like find your mate per se or find a hookup that night, but like it's more of an experiment as well. Like let's have a speed session with someone that you typically would totally cancel out before the minute you saw them. Oh, I don't date that, that's not my type, right? I think it'd be really cool to like actually engage, because being on this gender journey that is transness, like I have a hunch that if we were actually raised in a vacuum, like a gender vacuum where we weren't taught about gender differences and standards and sexualities, then I think we would actually be a lot more fluid. So I think it'd be cool to have like a genderless speed dating event.
I fucking love that. Something that I just thought of actually as Alex was speaking is for masculine women or mask presenting women or butch women, I remember this is something I had to learn myself, which is when I would go to a club, you know, I was presenting as a woman and getting upset at a femme being with another femme and being upset because it's like, wow, two beautiful femmes that I should have, why do they have each other? You know? And I would encourage any masculine women who are attracted to femmes to question why they feel that way when it happens, and also question why they feel upset when they see two masculine women together. Because it's the way that I have seen within the lesbian community, the way that I've seen women get so upset, maybe even more so than like over two femme women being together, but getting so incredibly upset at seeing two masculine women. I've often heard them compare it to, oh, this is like two gay men being together. And I would look at these people like, what? But we're all gay. What do you mean? And of course, I mean, this toxic masculinity at play, but I would encourage folks to sit with those feelings, feel uncomfortable first and explore where it comes from. And then understand, and then once you explore, you know, like try to understand how we've been socialized to feel this way against, I mean, we're literally, when we feel upset either about a femme dating a femme or masculine person dating another masculine person, we are literally being upset or perpetuating, someone rewrote it, heteronormativity, which is so incredibly weird. Like, we are gay, but we are heteronormative? What? It doesn't make sense. Make it make sense. So next time I would just encourage people to sit with their feelings and move out of that, or move into the discomfort to understand where it's coming from.
Brilliant homework assignments. Very, very excited to try that out when everything comes back. So just to kind of wrap this up, a big overarching question of this panel. What is the importance of safe spaces? How can we create them? And more importantly, how can we continue to protect them?
From an activist perspective, I'm thinking about it in terms of this: a safe space is how and where we build community, how and where we build the movement, how we start the movement, how we work out the kinks, shit, how we even end the movement. At the end of the day, we all come and gather in this one space. We need to know that this space that we all stand in is safe for every single one of us. But at the end of the day, I think the most incredibly, I mean, your foundation is always the important part, right? Like, you can't build a house on a sinkhole in Florida. Not to scare you, Cyrus, but you need a very strong foundation, and you can't have that if everyone that is coming to join you in this place doesn't feel secure in that space. And so I already forgot the question, but I think I'm answering it. And so that for me is the importance, because it's like, when I think, this is even if it's online, you need online safe spaces as well. I think about, as a baby fag, if I may, queer fag, I don't care. As a baby, all the LGBTQIA things, how I found my community was by going on to a website that was called Down E-Link, which was like the gay Black MySpace, or going on Instagram and finding hashtags that pertain to like my communities and finding people like myself, or Tumblr. How can I forget Tumblr, which is a community in and of itself, like died off the face of the earth. But like, that could, as much as social media can be harmful, especially, and thank God they introduced that whole mute certain comments feature, it also facilitates a digital area for you to create your safe space so you can build out your community, your crew of friends and people that maybe you might not ever meet, and people that might become your best friend who live across the country, people that you can talk to every other day that you might not necessarily be close to, but close enough to have a really serious conversation. It's like, I can go talk to Cyrus tomorrow about whatever, but I met Cyrus both at Henrietta Hudson, but also because of Instagram, you know, like it's like twofold. Those are both safe spaces for me. And so I am going to say that it's based in, I forgot the question, but I think the importance of it is that it is where you build your community, and that's why you need your safe space. Because I mean, there is no way that I couldn't have found, especially speaking of Henrietta Hudson, back in the day when some of us baby queers had fake IDs, I'm sorry, Lisa. I know y'all are better about it now, but it was also the late 2000s and nobody cared. But back before, was Bloomberg the mayor then? I can't remember. Back when some of us were baby queers and just had helicopter/abusive parents like mine, we were sort of age or almost of age and just wanted to find our community. I can't do that in a straight bar. I can't find folks like me at a straight bar or on MySpace. Well, I can on MySpace, but just not Tom's MySpace. I can't I can't find people like me just randomly on the street, or maybe I can, but like, how do I approach them? The safe space gives you not just that opportunity to create the community, but also just to approach your idols, to approach people that look like you, that sound like you, that have the same thoughts, feelings, and ideas. Like, that is what a safe space is, and that is why, for me, and that's why it's so important. Sorry, I'm a rambler. I'm done.
No, I mean, I feel like Devin-Norelle, I actually met you like out in the nightlife scene in New York City, you know what I mean? And I feel like there's also such a continuity between like nightlife and then, you know, meeting people and being in community with people in all of these other areas, you know, like I feel like it was like years ago that I met you, like being out and about, you know? So it's like, yeah, so it's like also, you know, nightlife facilitates like real community. And I also just feel like, look, everybody deserves to feel joy. Everybody deserves a respite. Everybody deserves a place to go where they can just go and be with their friends and be with their people and have a good time. So from just my own like selfish POV, I feel like aspiring to a safe space in nightlife is important because everyone deserves to have that place where they can go. So yeah.
Hey, yeah, just adding to all that, you know, Devin-Norelle, your answer made me think like the safe space of like a queer bar is often like the first step of a lot of people's journey into their own identity, into feeling comfortable with accepting themselves. So that's one reason why it's important to protect them. And then how do we protect them? Queer spaces must evolve to match the community that is evolving. And I know even the word queer is an evolution as a label itself. It wasn't used before, and now it's being reclaimed. But progress, like if the brand of the LGBTQ community is progress, right? It's like expansion. So I think it's really important to like have these conversations. And I've seen the way Henrietta Hudson's has evolved just in the few years that I've seen it, and it's awesome. It's leading the way in a lot of ways. So yeah, I think, yeah, what we're doing right now is a way to protect the spaces. So cool.
Like, protect all of our queer bars across the country. Like, we need these places when we come back. I am not going to the straight bar when the world opens at all.
Truly, same.
Thank you all for your beautiful answers. I'm gonna consult the Q&A in our last 10 minutes. I see that we have a new question from Charles. Do you think gender-specific spaces, i.e. gay bar, lesbian bar, trans bar, etc., enhance or hurt our efforts to create safe spaces as a community? Just playing devil's advocate, but do we feel safer around people that look like us, or are we better off intermingling?
I think that both types of spaces can coexist. I think we absolutely need safe spaces, and I think it's absolutely possible for us to commingle. But I think that at the end of the day, when we are commingling, there is room for an incident that is harmful to you, as whether you be a queer person, a person of color, or any marginalized community. You are essentially, and I hate to say this, you are essentially putting yourself at risk when you're going to a venue or nightlife space that doesn't necessarily cater to your community. I think of meatpacking. I mean, right? From the gate, literally from the red carpets or whatever it is that they have there, it's already unsafe for you, because especially everything is so gendered right away. Oh, here's a guy, you need to pay money. Okay, but you also can't come into this club unless you have a certain amount of women from you. Now imagine going to these clubs and your gender is ambiguous. What the fuck do you do? But also you're gonna be stared at and gawked at as if you're a freak. So like, yeah, you probably get in and you probably will have your, whoever your friends are that want to party in this area that will mingle with you and introduce you to their friends, and everyone will respect you. But what about the larger crowd in general? Perhaps you need to go to the bathroom. What happens when you need to go to the bathroom? Now, take everything I just said and put that person in a safe space. There are gender neutral bathrooms. No one gives a fuck what you look like. No one cares what your gender is. People are probably super friendly. Like, yes, you absolutely need these safe spaces, because non-safe spaces aren't safe at the end of the day, even if you're trying to be, I don't know, as open-minded about it as you might. The thing is, I do end up going to a lot of non-queer clubs, and most of the times it is with my brother, and he likes to go to meatpacking, and I'm like, okay, you know what, whatever, if you're buying me drinks, I don't care. And so also because the drinks down there are $15, obviously I have to buy a drink there. So my thing is, when I'm with him though, here's the other thing. I should have said this before, when you're going into these quote unquote non-safe spaces, you need to have an ally. When I'm going there, my ally is my brother, but also like his friends have been great allies as well. But when we were there, whoever of his filthy rich friends wants to buy a table, I'm always here for it, because again, I don't have to pay for anything. Whenever someone wants to buy the table, there's your safe space within the non-safe space, and not to say that everybody that is going to these clubs can afford to buy a table, but perhaps, like I said, go with 2 or 3 of your friends, perhaps that frequent these places, and they will be your ally. And I've had this experience where, especially when I'm not shade, not so much more now, but earlier in my transition, where I've needed to go to the bathroom, and I would get denied from both. What do? I go to my friend, or we might complain, or my friend would say, you need to let this person into the bathroom. You need to have that ally, I think, in spaces that aren't built for you. A lot of these places, a lot of clubs are built to make money. They don't really care about the patron that much. That's also something that I forgot to say. A club that is built for a particular demographic has certain things in mind. It is built for you to be safe. There are policies initiated to keep you safe. They care about the patron. They're not opening a bar. Henrietta Hudson is just not opening a bar just because they want to make money. Like, obviously, yes, you do, but also like, here's a person who is a lesbian woman and wants to congregate with other people like herself, and wants to congregate with other queer people like herself. She wants to feel safe in this space, so it is completely curated to feel that way, not just for her, but the people that are coming to celebrate with her. So I hope that I answered the question just now.
I also feel like it's such an and where people who are in marginalized groups absolutely should have their own spaces to be able to be in community and not have to worry about facing any form of discrimination. So totally, I think it's an and thing. And I think sometimes there can be this scarcity mentality. I think when it especially comes to talking about gender and lesbian spaces, where because of sexism, because of misogyny, because of various forms of discrimination, I think there's a real fear of losing lesbian spaces. And I think that people, again, deserve to have their own spaces because it is coming from a place of wanting to be safe. But I also think that that also is sometimes informed by this idea of scarcity, when it can be when it can be that, like, we can evolve, we can be inclusive, we can have all of these things, like we can have spaces where people that can be dedicated towards certain communities, and we can also be all in community with each other.
Yeah, great answers, y'all. So, I think like if it's a gendered space, then it's usually not safe or not even welcoming at all to people outside that specific gender demographic. And that doesn't work. Like if you have a friend group that's not all just like you, or if you don't like to date people that are not just like you, then that gendered space is not going to serve you. I feel like if you have literally zero diversity in your friend group and dating group, then sure, those groups, those really gendered spaces might be great, but I don't think that that doesn't help the LGBTQ community or society at large. And I think it's great to have more inclusive queer spaces as an experiment, because we do live in this world together. And if we can't work together and figure it out, like in a queer safe space, then how is the rest of the world ever going to catch up and do it? So I definitely, I believe in creating more inclusive queer spaces rather than segregating ourselves across the LGBTQ community.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much, all of you. Devin-Norelle, Cyrus, Alex, this was excellent. I want to thank you all so much for your participation and for your honest and heartfelt answers. I look forward to meeting you all one day at the bar when it's
the world ever open.
When Henrietta Hudson's doors open, I want to be the first person in. I want to be the first person to order a shot. I want to be the first person on the dance floor.
I just hope that the outside patio is open, because I plan to have like a frozen drink in my hand and then join other. Like I hope it's during the summertime.
Yes, and shout out to Lisa. I see you're on here. I miss you so much. I miss Hen so much. Can't wait to come up and hang out.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
Oh, they can't say anything, can they? The attendees.
Oh, okay.
No, but I feel her spirit when she's saying
Thank you so much for including me. This was such a wonderful conversation, and I hope so much that we all get to hang out in person. Also, Cyrus and Devin-Norelle, your t-shirt game we didn't get to talk about. So strong. So strong.
Thank you.
Thank you. And your bang game is on point.
Yes.
I feel so seen.
Always.
Thank you.
Always. I also just never knew that was intentional, and that just makes me feel a gazillion times better about your bangs.
going for my little retro vibe over here. So
I love it.
and the earrings.
That is something I wanted to bring up
you.
also, like, that's one way, we've always done signaling in the queer community. And I think, that's another way. Like Devin-Norelle, you and I, we walk in with beards, facial hair, and like, if we're wearing like a little queer pin, little pronoun pin,
yes.
These are great conversation starters too. So exactly. So
wait, I got a question since we're on that topic. Have all of you or any of you seen the old L Word? The original series. Do you remember there was an episode? I still don't know the answer to this. This is a perfect time to ask. When Shane and Alice were asking Dana if the woman was a lesbian because she wore tapered jeans with heels, and I don't know the answer.
Oh my God, talk about toxic masculinity and femininity in the queer community. The original L word is
They never really
Truly.
answered it.
I feel like that feels like a very LA centric question, you know? So I feel like as an East Coaster my whole life, I don't know. Is that like a California thing? No clue.
Right.
I think they, if I recall correctly, they thought that I think the cuffed jeans was perhaps a sign. And then there was the ultimate Shane test, remember, where Shane walks up to Lara and Lara doesn't indicate anything or look
Oh,
at
right.
So they're like, no, it can't be.
She's not attracted to me. I'm masculine. What's happening? Oh my God. Speaking of toxic masculinity. Wow. I couldn't sit through a watch through after the first season. Definitely could, as of recent, it hasn't aged well.
Still wildly entertaining though.
I'm sorry, I completely just like threw us off course, but I had to ask that question after you mentioned signaling. Sorry.
Truly, if any conversation can end with us talking about the original L word, like I'm happy, you know?
Great.
Same here. Well, thank you all again so much. I hope you have a lovely evening. Beautiful weekend.
You too.
You too.
Everyone,
Thank you so
have a good
much. And
night.
yes, if you learned anything, if you laughed at all, please, or even if that didn't happen, please donate $5 to $10. Link in the chat. We got it. We got to support our queer spaces. This has been the hardest year ever. So, you know, and gift cards are on sale right now that can be used as soon as you get to the bar. So
what?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Hold on.
Load up. It's like a Dave and Buster's card. You can load up right now and then you're good to go.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I forgot to ask you if there's anything you wanted to platform for yourselves right now, real quick before we end. No.
I can't think of anything. Everything's on my Instagram. Steroid Beyonce.
I sell these t-shirts. I designed a bunch of t-shirts. Like there's the trans visibility collection. There's this another statement collection. So otherismyth.com. Otherismyth.com. Think beyond us versus them. We're so much more similar, and the differences are really superficial. So check it out.
Actually, that just reminded me. I am upping my apparel game by experimenting right now. But where the hell did I put it? I might be selling mugs soon, which is exciting. I literally just got it in the mail today. Hold on one second, maybe I can find it. Where'd it go?
Yeah, this mug is too basic. I need to up my game. So show me what you got.
It's too far away. It's in the kitchen and I'm too lazy to run. But I will post it on my Instagram immediately after this.
I was just gonna say, find me at Alex Berg on all the social media. I love to hear from people and like throw your coins at hens. You know, if you want to buy me a gift card, I would also take that. So.
I did not know there were gift cards. I'm super hype about this right now.
Yes. So Alex's Tequila Shot Fund is up and running.
Thank you so much.
Oh my God.
All right.